Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Spider-Verse Retrospectives. And today we're going to be continuing our discussion on the Spider-Verse tie-ins to Secret Wars as we take a look at Spider-Verse Volume 2, Number 2. Now, last time on Spider-Verse, the multiverse was destroyed. The heroes of Earth 616 and Earth 1610 were powerless to save it. Now, all that remains is Battleworld, a massive patchwork planet composed of the fragments of worlds that no longer exist, maintained by the iron will of its god and master Victor Von Doom. Each region is a domain unto itself. And one of those domains contains an alternate version of New York where, for whatever reason, several years ago, Spider-Man mysteriously vanished. However, this domain is not bereft of spider people, as for whatever reason, a handful of Spideys from across the destroyed multiverse have called this place home, including Gwen Stacy, aka Spider-Gwen, Billy Braddock, aka Spider-UK, Anya Corazon, aka the main universe Spider-Girl, and Pavitzer Prabhakar, aka Spider-Man India. However, all of them don't exactly feel like they belong here. Because of how Battleworld operates, none of them remember their previous lives from before Battleworld existed, but they do have some lingering recollections. They can't actually access them as regular memories, but they are there in their subconscious, which results in them having either dreams or just feelings that call out to them and just let them know you don't belong here. And it's through that connection that the Spideys actually end up seeking each other out, as Pavitzer actually wound up tapping into that connection and wound up essentially creating a digital web that allowed him to find other Spideys, specifically Billy and Anya, and which in turn they were able to share stories and were able to figure out that clearly something isn't right. As for Gwen, though, she was able to put the pieces together because, well, proof that she doesn't exactly belong here is that in this domain there was a Gwen Stacy once, and she's dead. So, you kind of know that something's not right there. And as such, as she began investigating what happened to her counterpart from this domain, she was able to piece together that somehow her death was connected to Spider-Man, and there are rumored connections to this domain's Norman Osborn, who was not only the Baron of this domain, but also the Mayor of New York. As such, Gwen decided to go undercover at Oscorp to try and gather as much intel as she could, and in her findings, she managed to find a wing of Oscorp that was designated for special research, so to speak. And thus, after managing to essentially kidnap one of the people that worked there, she managed to gain access to the wing and found not only intel on herself and the other spider people, but a fifth spider that called this domain home. Peter Porker, aka Spider-Ham, who for whatever reason was just, when Gwen found her, was sleeping in a bed with all these machines hooked up to him. However, before Gwen could rouse him from his slumber and get him out of here, Norman Osborn came in and to let Gwen know that he was fully aware that she was going to be coming, which is where today's issue actually picks up, as, well, Gwen doesn't really know how to react to this. While Norman is being a bit more cordial to this and even saying, I see you found Peter. Great, I think you two will be spending a lot more time together. Gwen just doesn't really know how to react. However, in the commotion, Spider-Ham ends up waking up and is just kind of wondering, hey, who's messing with his slumber? And, of course, Gwen freaks out the instant that this pig starts talking, but although she also thinks it's kind of awesome, and the instant that the good Mr. Porker sees Gwen, he reacts by saying, oh, it's that dream again. However, before he can further elaborate, Gwen ends up grabbing Norman and webbing him up with the intent of, well, he clearly has some idea what the heck's going on, so she wants answers from him and she wants to get Ham out of there. Though he says that he's not going anywhere because, well, he's naked under his blanket, so he at least wants to get dressed, so he makes a grab for his Spidey jammies. However, before Gwen and Ham can go anywhere, that's when security arrives, and seeing Gwen holding Norman Osborn all webbed up, they immediately pull out their laser rifles and open fire on them. Gwen, to try and get them off her back, decides to just chuck Norman at them to try and distract them, but sadly in the commotion, one of the shots and one of the lasers ends up hitting Spider-Ham and knocking him out. As such, Gwen realizing she has to start trying to prioritize, decides that rather than just grabbing Norman and Ham at the same time, she has to prioritize Ham as he's probably injured. As such, she manages to grab Ham and she ends up webbing up Ham, and they just jump right through an open window out of Oscorp. And while one of the security officers intends to shoot at Gwen with one of his rifles, Norman ends up telling him to stop because well, if she did, because if they fall, they'll die. So, because yeah, the laser rifles were set to stun. But either way, yeah, them falling at that point will just be pointless. And so with Norman saying that Gwen's kind of a poor girl because she has no idea what the heck's going on. But then, however, thankfully, Spider-Ham is unharmed, and the comic cuts ahead to later as Gwen has taken Ham to an underpass in a hobo jungle. Thankfully, he's gotten he's gotten his costume on, and of course, Gwen is just kind of in shock in seeing him and wants to ask more questions about him. Though this whole time she's been calling him Peter, and he just asked her to not call him that because he has a secret identity and all that crap, which Gwen kind of finds ridiculous, especially since they're in a hobo jungle, and he's an anthropomorphic talking pig. He kind of stands out like a sore thumb. But Spider-Ham, because, well, he's from a world where walking, talking anthropomorphic animals are normal, he thinks that the humans are the weird ones, and they all look the same, and so Gwen decides to just kind of humor him a little and just starts calling him Ham. As such, Gwen and Ham start getting to talking, and yeah, it turns out that they both have a kind of a familiarity with each other, as Gwen feels like she knows Ham, and likewise Ham lets her know that he's been having dreams about her, which at first Gwen finds a little bit gross, but she sees what he means, because yeah, there's clearly some kind of connection there, and they both kind of share. There's something bigger going on, which Ham actually explains was something that Norman was looking into back at Oscorp. Of course, Gwen doesn't really understand the whole connection thing, saying she's been a solo actor her whole life, but it's at that point when the other Spideys managed to catch them, as thanks to Pavitter's tech, they were able to track Gwen and Ham down, and they end up bringing her back into the fold as Anya, Billy, and Pavitter prop up and bring them back to Pavitter's safe house, which is a little storage unit above a Chinese restaurant. Or was it? Hold on one second. Okay, it wasn't a Chinese restaurant, it was a Chinese grocery store. But ultimately, yeah. Basically, once they're back at Pavitter's safe house, they all pretty much start swapping notes with, honestly, a very humorous scene as when they're talking about how each of them got their powers, with Gwen and Billy getting bitten by radioactive spiders. Ham actually says, well, actually, I was a spider that was bitten by a radioactive pig, with everyone just giving him, just dead eyes before going back to the conversation. But either way, yeah, they all start noticing the similarities of their stories. While they're not all note to note the same, they do know that there are some similarities between all their tales, that they all got their powers via mystical spider bites or were gifted them by mystical enchantments, like with Anya and Pavitter. And likewise, they all decided to use those powers to be superheroes, help others, and so on and so forth. And at the same time, they all have dim memories of lives they cannot think that they know that they've never led, even but at the same time, these things still feel very real, and even Gwen has confirmation that this life is clearly not hers, because the Gwen Stacy of this domain is dead, and yet here are Gwen stands. As such, yeah, they're able to put together that, yeah, while they do have memories of this place, there's a very good chance that none of them are from here, though none of them really has a clear answer as to what the heck's going on. And when they start trying to talk about it and discuss it, they kind of get interrupted. As while they're in the middle of discussing this, that's when Pavitter's tech starts going off, and it detects a sixth signal somewhere in the domain. And when Pavitter sees this, he even says, it's him. And sure enough, we soon cut to the source of that as the comic cuts over to the docks, and we see that in a warehouse by said docks, there are a couple supervillains trying to rough a couple guys up. In this case, the supervillains are Tombstone and Carnage, and basically we get a bit of a narration that talks about how these two guys are some of the rough and tough guys, and they're from another group that are trying to hustle in on the east side of New York and are trying to expand operations, and how this guy was just sitting in and watching and waiting until they blow their whole operation. However, it's at this point when the team of Spideys arrives, and, well, they don't really know about this mysterious figure's agenda, and what they see upon arriving at said warehouse are two big bad supervillains there torturing people, and, well, no matter what reality they're from, Spider-Man ain't gonna deal with that shit, so they all decide to jump into the warehouse and start kicking ass. It's here where our unseen narrator finally decides to make himself known, as he thinks that what they're doing is stupid, but hey, Element Surprise has been thrown out the window, so he decides to join in too. And we see who our sixth Spider-Man for this team is: Spider-Man Noir, who immediately upon jumping into the scene starts helping the team out and giving them pointers to try and deal with both Tombstone and Carnage. But ultimately, things do turn out well. The Spideys are able to coordinate well enough with each other, and thanks to their own skills in combat, they are able to at least take down Carnage and Tombstone well, and turn the tide. Though during said battle, Spider-Man Noir does help does help Anya by giving her a heads up before Carnage can attack her, and to take Carnage out of the field, he reaches into his belts and pulls out a sonic emitter, which is odd for him to have considering he's from the 30s, but it actually works and manages to disrupt Carnage's symbiote enough for him to go back to being Cletus Cassidy, and before the Carnage symbiote can reform, Spider-Man Noir ends up shooting him with his bullets, which the Spideys are meaning like, whoa, don't do that, because, well, hey, we don't kill. But Spider-Man Noir throws it back in the face. So, well, maybe you don't, but maybe I have a better grasp of real politics. But ultimately, he says that he didn't kill him. He just kind of wanted to keep the Carnage symbiote busy, which I can actually see the logic in that. If the Carnage symbiote is busy healing Cletus up, then it won't have enough time to go back onto his suit and go back onto the offensive. So, hey, there's some good on that. But either way, yeah, the Spideys immediately start questioning Noir and what the heck he's doing, and it turns out that Noir is fully aware of the other Spideys in this domain. In fact, he's actually been keeping an eye on them for the last few weeks, looking into their lives, following them around, and so on and so forth. And it's because he's been following around that it's taken Spidey so long to find him, because, well, he didn't want to be found. And while he was tailing Pavitzer, he stole some of the technology from his warehouse and created a device that was supposed to mask his own exotic signature, so that Pavitzer couldn't find him. And it's likewise that it was by utilizing that same technology that he was able to utilize the sonic emitter, which I can actually buy that he could be able to do that, because while Spider-Man Noir is from the 30s, he is an alternate version of Peter Parker, and considering that he is stuck in a version of New York set in the modern day, I'm guessing that considering that his memories are probably assimilated to this place like the other Spideys, he probably have enough of a grasp of modern technology to be able to adapt quickly, and upon seeing this more advanced technology, be able to think, okay, maybe this goes here, goes there, and maybe after a few tries, actually learn how it works. So you know what? I'll give you that. I'm not gonna call BS for a Spidey from the 30s not knowing how to use this technology. But either way, yeah, the Spideys just start wanting to know what the heck Spider-Man Noir is up to, and he reveals that he's an investigative reporter, and that essentially he's just been going around doing his own thing, trailing stories, investigating people, which includes not just the Spideys, but other dangerous goings-on in this section of Battle World. And basically, as he puts it, his job is to figure out who the bad guys are in the story, and then punish them. Which even the other Spideys point out that that's not what an investigative reporter really does. But ultimately, they figure that if he's been investigating them, if Spider-Man Noir's been investigating them, they might have a good idea about what the heck's happening to them and why they're having all these weird senses of deja vu about having memories of lives they never lived and why they all feel connected and so on and so forth. But Noir is actually a bit tight-lipped, mostly because he thinks that if the Spideys are able to find them, then someone else was probably able to find him as well. Unfortunately for Noir, though, before he can actually make a getaway, the group gets ambushed as the comic ends, as we see the Sinister Six arriving on the scene. In this case, consisting of Dr. Octopus, the Sandman, Electro, Vulture, the Scorpion, and Kraven the Hunter. And yeah, that's where we leave the story. So, thoughts on this issue? Again, it's fine. What I still like is that it's still laying on the whole mystery angle regarding the Spideys and their connection to Battle World. Basically, what I like still is that for one thing, we have the Spideys now actually meeting up and comparing notes with each other. And it's through comparing notes that they're able to start piecing together more parts of the puzzle. Like they're all start seeing connections between all their stories. Start realizing, maybe we're more than just random people who all just happen to have spider powers. As they start noticing some things that they all have in common, including the fact that they all have very dim memories of lives that they swear they never led. Some memories are very clear and concise. Like, all of them remember their origin stories very well. Like, because Gwen and Billy were both bitten by radioactive spiders. Anya and Pavitzer got their powers from mystical beings, from mystical men who wanted them to rise up and be better. And again, Ham was a spider who got bitten by a radioactive pig. Which, again, I love that. I love how the other Spideys react upon hearing that story. They just look at him, wide-eyed, say nothing, and then go back to what's important. I love that, just a bit of what the fuck. It's great. But I do like that the Spideys are starting to piece together that something isn't right. It creates a sense of mystery and intrigue because you do want to see the Spideys start putting things together and start figuring out what exactly is going on, especially considering the context of the story. We, the readers, know why they're here. We know why. Even if you haven't read Secret Wars, the freaking opening text that I read to you at the beginning of this story explains the situation. The multiverse is destroyed, and the world that the Spideys are on now is just a fragment, is just the scattered fragments of their worlds from the multiverse all patched together, with the denizens of this world having no idea that anything is wrong because from their perspective, this is all the lives they've always lived, and because of that, and because the consequence of that, because the Spideys have two sets of memories, one's from Battleworld and one's from their real lives, they're having trouble figuring out which are real and which aren't. The ones that they swear are real are the ones that they're consciously denying because they don't match up. They all have lingering memories, and to add proof that things aren't right, and that this domain, despite what their memories are telling them, is not home, are because one, Gwen's counterpart here is dead, and Gwen swears that she's never died, and then freaking Spider-Ham, because he's an anthropomorphic talking cartoon pig. Yeah, you can't. Yeah, regardless of what your memories tell you, it's really hard to rationalize that. That's silly. That's weird. That is something that does not belong. You have an entire domain of normal, average, everyday people, and the rest of the stuff you could maybe explain away a little, but Spider-Ham, no, that does not fit. And basically, all of these things combined are an indicator that this is not their home, especially since, like I said when I talked about the last issue, all of these different Spideys feel like they're all fishes out of water. All of them are from very different settings, and all of them do not belong in this version of New York. And because of that, they all feel like pieces of a puzzle that don't exactly fit. I like seeing that, and I like seeing the Spideys just start putting more and more together. As well as, again, how I like seeing Spider-Man Noir. Which is kind of a double-edged sword, but I'll get back to that. But another thing I do like with the story is that they are lacing in more stuff connected to Norman Osborn. Again, we saw that Spider-Ham was in his care, so we immediately want to know, what does Norman have to do with this? Because he clearly is somewhat aware of what the Spideys are doing. He clearly is looking for them, and even Spider-Ham talked about how Norman discussed how all the Spideys were connected. And combine that with the fact that he had Spider-Ham on standby and was actually kind of happy to see Gwen, it makes you wonder, what is his deal? Why is he invested in seeing the Spideys? What does he gain from it? It's curious, and it continues drawing you in and makes you want to know what exactly is going on and how it all fits together. I think that's really cool. And again, on top of that, seeing the Spideys coming together and starting to form their team, it's kick-ass. Again, it's not as big as in the regular Spider-Verses. Again, unlike in the main Spider-Verse storyline, this isn't every single Spider-Man from across the multiverse teaming up. It's just a handful of them, and they're coming together not to face a big threat. It's because they all realize that they don't exactly fit into their narrative, so to speak, and they want to know exactly why that's the case. So I like that. I mean, it doesn't mean that there aren't other Spider-Men on Battleworld. There are. Most domains do have their own versions of Peter Parker or Spider-Man and so forth. In Armor Wars, there's a version of Spider-Man who's called Spider-Man, and his gimmick is that his armor was actually infected with a spider virus, which made him more connected to it, and also gave him his unique spider powers. It's actually awesome. I recommend looking into that, but sadly he was wasted potential as well as there. Although he did kickstart the plot. But I'm getting off topic. I'm not talking about that story. We're talking about Spider-Verse. My point is this. I do like that we get to see these Spideys still coming together and kicking ass. Because, again, it's still really cool to see these different versions of Spider-Man just working alongside each other. It's always cool. It was cool in the main Spider-Verse storyline. It was cool in the tie-ins for that storyline. And it's cool here. So regardless of the setting, I do think it's nice. If I have to list any major flaws of the story, believe it or not, well, I guess my biggest flaw would be, ironically, Spider-Man Noir. Well, I do think it is cool, as he still feeds into the whole, these Spideys don't belong here, because he's a Spider-Man from the 1930s, and thus has an attitude that reflects that fact. But there's also kind of an issue with that. He's a lot more standoffish than the other Spideys here, which again, I can kind of get he's Spider-Man noir, and even the whole gimmick with his original miniseries was that his story was a lot more serious and dark than the regular Marvel stories. But he was still Spider-Man. And when he was drawn into the original Spider-Verse, he was actually more cooperative with everybody. He was a lot more friendly. He was willing to get down and dirty in some cases and resort to methods that other Spideys would not consider, which is, again, part of the reason why he carries the rifle, which I admit I do find that creative, that he was able to kind of get around the no-killing rule by shooting Cletus, and he only did it because he knew the Carnage symbiote would take time to try and heal him. But it just feels weird how standoffish he is with the other Spideys. How he didn't trust them at all, and how he ultimately wanted to stay away from them. And when they jump in guns blazing, he calls them knuckleheads and thinks that it's naive of them to just go in without getting all the facts first. Because here's the thing: he's Spider-Man. And while he is ultimately is investigative in his approach, well, he isn't a mystery buff. He's fucking Spider-Man. I've read his original miniseries. He could connect dots and put pieces together. He definitely was one of those guys who was talk softly and carry a large stick. By emphasis on the stick. Because he still was able to kick it, because he still would usually go in guns blazing regardless of the situation. Sometimes it would come back to bite him in the ass, and we even saw that in Edge of Spider-Verse #1. While he was intelligent and smart, when he was issued Mysterio's demands, rather than being secretive about it, he just confronted Mysterio right away and tried fighting him off. Again, he wasn't stupid when he fought him, as he was able to try and be creative and started noticing patterns to take him out, but he was still Spider-Man. He was a little bit more serious, but he was still a bit of fighter. He was still strong, and he could even be jocular when the mood suited him. Especially when he took down Mysterio and told the audience, "Ladies and gentlemen, since the sacrifice wasn't killed, you're all getting a refund." I like that. It's kind of nice. And again, while he can resort to more serious methods if he needs to, he is still Spider-Man. Or do I need to remind you how in the Spider-Woman tie-in to the original Spider-Verse, he was actually an advocate for going up against the guys in the metal suits who were harassing innocent civilians, even though he and Silk were told by Jessica Drew to lay low. Again, he's a more serious Spider-Man, but he's still Spider-Man. So it just feels weird that he's he's standoffish with the other Spideys, that he considers them knuckleheads, and also they kind of made him a little racist. Yeah, I understand he's from the 1930s, but I don't think but even in this context of the stories within Spider-Verse, I did not see him being kind of racist. Even in Spider-Man, even in the Spider-Man Noir miniseries, there was actually a story where he actually went up against a racist in the form of his world's Otto Octavius. But that's small potatoes in the grand scheme of things. Basically, before you misinterpret that, I'm not talking about the casual racism. Again, the idea of some 1930s, it just feels out of character for him to have that, is what I'm saying. So, my point is this: Spider-Man Noir's character, while it's cool to see him there, his character just feels not as well written as he is in the main story as he is originally. So, I'll dock points with that. But otherwise, though, story does still feel like it moves at a good pace. It's got some good character interactions. It still lays down a few nice plot threads to keep you interested in what's going on. I love how they still bring them together. I love some of the jokes and dialogue. The action is still kick-ass. It's still awesome to see all these Spideys brought together, and the story still manages to keep building up tension, especially with the end of the issue as the Spideys are confronted by the Sinister Six. So, overall, still a decent issue, and still a good part. So, yeah, that's about it. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson. I'll hopefully see you on Saturday as we take a look at issue 3. So till then, hope you have a good night. I hope you're staying cool on this hot day, and take care. Bye-bye.